The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Next week is going to be, I think, kind of great for geopolitics. It's going to be there's going to be a lot of developments here. I think things are going to move both quickly and slow. I don't know how slow it'll move, but things are going to happen fast here, I think, because we have Trump in France at the G7 right now, and it's the G7 plus. G7 is referring to I think it's Global 7 is what it stands for, but it's the 7 largest economies in the world. It used to be the G8. Russia was part of it until Hillary Clinton kicked him out after he went into Crimea to. He actually didn't even go in there and liberate Crimea. He just went in there because Crimea invited him in, because the leader of the Crimea parliament went to Moscow and said, "Hey, we did like a vote, and we want y'all. We want to become part of Russia. So now we need you to come here because Ukraine's not going to like that." We learned all this from the Book of Trump, so I hope people are watching that show and liking and appreciating it, trying to capture the modern history that we're looking at. Yet last night, speaking of, had Clay Parikh on the show, the Book of Trump, to discuss his personal firsthand experience in the 1983 Beirut bombing. Highly recommend you go watch that. That was a really, really good one. Clay, it was amazing. So really appreciate Clay coming on there and sharing that. I know it wasn't easy. It's not always easy to talk about that stuff, but he did a great job. So we definitely appreciate that. Let's start today. I want to, I don't know how much of this I'm going to play, but I was watching this amazing segment that Steve Bannon did with this guy, Rabbi Wallachie. And actually, he does a pretty good job of introducing himself. He's been on this, I think he's been on War Room a bunch, but he kind of introduces himself. He gives his bona fides in this segment. Let's see. I'm going to let this play for like 6 or 7 minutes because that's how good it is. He kind of lays out the case here from the Israeli perspective. And I think this is like a good setting the table before we start the first course. So let's go ahead and listen to this.
Rabbi Wallachie, you're with us this morning. Walk us through exactly where you think this thing stands. You're one of the most reasonable guys. Obviously, you have a point of view, as all of us do, but just walk us through in your wisdom.
Sorry, I had it set on a faster speed so I could breeze through it. I'm resetting it at normal speed, and I'm going to continue.
Exactly where are we on this interim deal to get to a broader deal? And more importantly, where are we in this war, sir?
Well, Steve, I remember some conversations we had on War Room around the beginning of this or in the days leading up to it, where I kept reminding us that the U.S. and Israel do not have the same interests. And people who pretend that they do, like Mark Levin, and I'm talking from the Israel side. I'm sitting.
Okay, so I just want to point out that this is true. I don't watch War Room nearly as much as I used to. Love Steve Bannon, but I do remember this guy coming on and talking about this and saying that our interests do not align. from Israel in America. And this guy is in Israel. He's an Israeli citizen. You'll hear him tell you that right now. But that kind of gives a little bit of a background there where you're not getting, the Mark Levin perspective. You're getting a more reasonable perspective. But with that said, I think it's important to know that as you hear what he says.
In Israel, I live in Israel. My kids fight in the Israeli army. I served in the Israeli army. That is where my concern is. I immigrated to this country, but pretending that the U.S. and Israel have the same interests is just a recipe for misunderstanding what we're seeing here. I remember talking about this months ago with you, Steve, that at some point we would see a divergence between U.S. and Israeli interests because we don't have the same goals for this Iran situation. Israel's goal is to, once and for all, deal with the enemies that have been attacking us and threatening us for decades and decades and decades. Almost every problem that Israel deals with has been funded by the Iranian regime, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah or the Iranians themselves, or the Assad regime before they fell. That was, it was what we call the Ring of Fire, the Houthis in Yemen as well. Israel wants to defeat our enemies. The United States wants to make sure that, I guess, what is in the best interest of the United States is determined by the president of the United States, by the commander in chief. And if he determines that the best thing for America is to open up the Straits of Hormuz and get a deal on the nuclear, and even if it leaves, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and if that's what the president determines is the best interest of the United States, so be it. But Israel's not in the deal. And as you mentioned that when President Trump first tweeted about this deal, and it was actually 2 days before it was announced, it was on the 11th, he put out a Truth Social post. He said that all the countries involved all agreed to it, and he listed the countries, and he listed the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, etc. He went on a whole list of countries, and that they're all in alignment. It's all approved by them. And Prime Minister Netanyahu's office then put out a statement thanking President Trump for all that he's done. But the opening line of the statement was, Israel is not a party to this deal. Because, as from the Israeli perspective, this deal is actually folly. Because we have an enemy in the north, Hezbollah, which is actually not even really correctly a proxy.
Okay, so I'm going to inject myself here as we go to give my commentary. This guy, again, he establishes his perspective. He's an Israeli. He's an American who has voluntarily immigrated to Israel. I don't know when he did it, but he did it at a point in his life when he would have served in the IDF. So I assume when he was young, he did this. He sounds American. You can hear he does not have an Israeli accent, so he wasn't born and raised there. Very common. This is a very common story, whether the people come from America or Russia or Europe or elsewhere. Very common situation for Israeli citizens. Most of them are dual citizens. He also establishes that he's not a Mark Levin. He's not Mark Levin. He's not giving you a blind pro-Israel take. He's being more realistic. He's acknowledging that U.S. interests and Israeli interests do not align. He also says, I am Israeli. That's where my interest stands. My interest is Israel. My interest is not America, right? Doesn't mean he hates America or he wishes ill for America, but he's acknowledging at the get-go that his interests are Israeli. He then brings up the peace deal. He acknowledges the fact that he points out some good points here. Trump listed all the countries when he first announced the peace deal that were involved or that have signed off on it. He said that have signed off on this peace deal that is forthcoming. This was days before the thing was even announced to be formalized. It was sometime last week. And Israel was one of the first countries named. I think it was Saudi Arabia, Israel, etc. And as he points out, Netanyahu then immediately comes out and says, we are not a party of this deal. And we now know that Israel was not consulted. Israel does not have had no influence over it. So it's interesting that Trump said that. Then he says, Wallachie says that this deal is folly. From the Israeli perspective, from his perspective, this deal is folly. This is why I think Bannon brings a lot of these people on. And this is what you have to appreciate about Bannon. For those who don't understand Bannon's MO, Bannon is, as Chris Paul has pointed out, he is communicating with him and Trump together. I think what they share is they communicate with multiple audiences at the same time. Bannon is basically the closest thing that we have, I think, in this movement to the MSM. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I mean that I think he casts the widest net and he brings in, the most, what we would describe as normies, people who are new to this information, who are departing the MSM and looking for alternative news sources. War Room is a logical place that they go. Doesn't mean it's the only place they go, but I think he's casting the broadest net. Okay. So he's not going deep down specific conspiracy theory rabbit holes, etc. He brings on people who are Zionists. He brings on people who I don't think he necessarily agrees with to give their perspective. He brings on a lot of people who I personally don't agree with their politics, right? But I think he does it because he's trying to curate a full view and understanding of the political zeitgeist, and you have to hear the voices in order to understand whether or not you agree with them. And just because you disagree with them doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to them. And I do believe that. I appreciate hearing this guy's perspective. So with that said, I'll keep playing it. But this is why you're going to see Bannon here break character here in a minute. I'm going to play a second clip. But I just want you to keep that in mind. He brings these people on for a reason.
Of Iran. And this is something I have to correct Eric Bolling, who was on before you. He was talking about, what Hezbollah will do, what Iran will do. There's no such thing. Hezbollah is the Iranian army. It's not like Hamas or the Houthis, who are a proxy, who are a separate organization who get funding and weapons from Iran. Hezbollah is actually Iran. It's like if you have American troops stationed in another country, they're not a proxy of the United States. They are the forward troops of the United States. So when Hezbollah starts launching drones at Israel yesterday, provoking an Israeli response, and then
I need to correct this. That is entirely false. Hezbollah is not an Iranian. It's not Iranian military. It might be an Iranian proxy. It might receive funding from Iran, and that relationship might go back to its origins in the early 1980s. But Hezbollah is mujahideen, meaning it is freedom fighters. They are people who have had their land invaded and have formed a resistance group, not unlike a resistance group that would form here in America if we had Mexican or Chinese or Canadian tanks rolling through our neighborhood. I would hope that most of you would pick up weapons and try to fight them. Like, that is what Hezbollah is. Now, you can hate them for that, but that is what they are. To say that they are the same thing as, the Iranian military, that it's the same thing as a U.S. soldier being deployed to the Middle East. That's silly. What it would be like would be the United States funding locals in Syria to fight the Syrian government. That's what it would be. Okay. It wouldn't be the same thing as someone born in Iran then going to Lebanon to fight. That's not what it is.
Which then provokes President Trump lashing out at Prime Minister Netanyahu. The question we have to ask about an incident like that is, why did Iran give orders to Hezbollah to fire yesterday when this deal was supposed to be finalized? The Iranians use Hezbollah to provoke Israel. That's how this whole thing with Lebanon started. There was no firing between Israel and Hezbollah before March 2nd, but on March 2nd, because of the U.S.-Israel joint action against Iran, Hezbollah started firing rockets from Lebanon into Israel. So Israel retaliated. Everything Israel does in Lebanon is to retaliate and remove Hezbollah. And what's more, by telling Israel to hold back in Lebanon, what we're doing is we're allowing Hezbollah to remain. We're making it far more difficult for the Lebanese government or the Israelis to get rid of Hezbollah, which is one of the stated goals officially here.
Okay, and so I just need to clarify another thing. My understanding, and I'm not on the ground, like I can't say this for certain, but my understanding of Hezbollah's viewpoint here is that when Israel started the war in Gaza on October 8th, I guess it was, their perspective is, if they're going to fight this enemy that has invaded their land multiple times, they fought a war with the IDF in 2006, I think it was. Israel lost. They drove Israel out in 2000 after an 18-year occupation of southern Lebanon. Their perspective is, if they're going to fight the IDF, which is a substantial military, a multi-front war is strategically the best way to fight them. So not only are they doing it from a position, as they claim, of altruism, like they see Gaza being attacked and they're going to stand up for Gaza, Right? It's also a pragmatic position. If the IDF has resources dedicated in Gaza, then picking a fight or then starting a fight with or resuming a fight that has been long going in the north while the IDF is occupied in the south is strategically the smart thing to do. And they said that they would stop as soon as the IDF pulled back out of Gaza. That was their position. You can agree with that. Like, you can agree with the logic. You can hate them for it. You can whatever, but that's the logic. The logic is not, they're not just going to do it because it makes them feel good. It's a strategic calculation that while your enemy is distracted over there, you're going to come in and attack the enemy in the back. Like, it's called a flank, and it is one of the oldest military formations, like moves, there is. So just want to point that out.
We're supposed to disarm Hezbollah and get them out of there so that the country of Lebanon could actually have its sovereignty back after decades of being occupied by the Iranian regime and being used as a basis to launch terrorism into Israel. So unfortunately, by trying to restrain the Israelis from attacking Hezbollah right now, President Trump is actually throwing a lifeline to Hezbollah. So the Israelis want no part of this. Now, let me talk politics here, Steve. We have the elections coming up, and there's a fascinating dynamic that has developed. When we talk about the divergence of U.S. and Israeli interests, let's talk about the interests of Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump, because with the approaching midterms and the domestic sensitivities about the war, the unpopularity of kinetic action on the American side, the problem with the rising oil prices domestically for President Trump, with the midterms approaching, President Trump's incentive is to not have kinetic action, to keep things de-escalated as we approach the midterms. The worst thing for him would be a kinetic flare-up. On the contrary, in Israel, though, Prime Minister Netanyahu's incentives politically move in the opposite direction. No one else is talking about this, Steve. They move in the opposite direction. For Prime Minister Netanyahu, for the Israeli people, and this is not only on the right, what's most interesting is that the criticism of Prime Minister Netanyahu from the left right now is identical as from the right, that we are not doing enough against Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Israeli people feel that we were sold a bill of goods in Gaza, where we were told, there's going to be all these countries that are going to come in, they're going to disarm Hamas, and we're finally going to move to a future where we don't have Hamas down there. Don't worry, it's all going to be taken care of. Nothing. We talked about that on War Room over the months. We don't have victory against Hamas. They're still in Gaza. We don't have victory over Hezbollah. They're still in Lebanon. The Israeli people are feeling very anxious about this, about the possibility that with our enemies on the ropes and victory over them within reach to finally move past all these terrorist groups in the Middle East, we are now being restrained, and we have the possibility that we don't have victory on any front. So Prime Minister Netanyahu's incentive structure politically is to escalate with his election coming, because if action is not taken up there, it hurts him politically. So their incentives are moving in opposite direction. We should expect the rift between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump to widen in the days and weeks ahead. That's my prediction.
Yeah. He said nobody talks about this. Not true, Rabbi. Not true. He even used some of the same terminology that we've been using here, incentive structure and whatnot. I think there's one more minute that I want to play of this. Let me do that. And then there's another clip where he's in a debate. This is from yesterday that I want to play.
I've said, I've been the most, I think, vocal about this, of saying, first off, UAE, Saudi, Qatar are American protectorates, but also Israel's an American protectorate in a vassal state. And I understand that has become a hot wire topic in Israel in this election, in this discussion. Do you believe, as one of the observers I think gets it right about Israel the large majority of the time, that this is the beginning of this break, that you won't be able to have even a scintilla of evidence going forward that Israel's a protectorate of the United States, that Israel's actually going to have its sovereignty? If that sovereignty means, breaking the relationship they have today and go to a different relationship, but that they can fight on and they can take on Hamas. There's no border peace. There's no Turkey providing security in Gaza. There's no Qatar underwriting it. You guys are full on in southern Lebanon, all the way up to Beirut, taking on Hezbollah, but you got to do what you got to do as a sovereign nation, sir.
that's where things are moving in Israel. And that's what these attacks on the Dakhia and Beirut yesterday in response to Hezbollah firing drones at our northern border. And let me be even more accurate. In response to Iran firing drones at our northern border towns. Remember, Hezbollah is Iran. So yesterday we have, in the midst of all this, where Iran is saying they want de-escalation in Lebanon, they provoke Israel. When Prime Minister Netanyahu did not heed President Trump's request to not respond, which I thought was an immoral request. It was absurd. We have drones being fired at civilian towns, and because no one got killed, we shouldn't do anything about it.
Hang over a second. That's pretty harsh coming from you. You believe the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, who's probably done more in relationship for Israel than any American president, you think he gave an immoral request?
Well, it was unwise. I mean, think about this. We're getting attacked by Hezbollah drones being fired at civilian towns. Families in their bomb shelters. People have been killed by these drones. People hear drone, they don't understand what this is. It's basically like a missile that you can control. They move very fast. They have an explosive tip on them, and they kill people. And we've had many casualties over the last 2 months during this supposed ceasefire from these drones being fired into our towns. And there were drones fired in yesterday morning by Hezbollah. And let's remember, the chain of command of Hezbollah starts in Tehran. So we have the Iranians firing drones at us in the morning. And the purpose of that, it's great game theory by the Iranians, because either Israel retaliates and then they can blame it on Trump and say, hey, you were complicit, or Trump tells Israel not to retaliate, and then either it turns into a widening rift between Trump and Netanyahu, which serves the Iranian interest, or Netanyahu listens to Trump, and that shows that the Iranians can then say, you see, we were able to fire on Israel with impunity and restrain them. It was a brilliant play by the Iranians, and I think that President Trump fell into this trap because he wants the deal. So listen, I love President Trump. I can't imagine the dystopian hell we'd be living in if Kamala Harris had won. He's done amazing things for Israel, but we have to be clear-eyed about this current situation. The desire for a deal has clouded his judgment about the Middle East. You cannot allow these people to attack us with impunity.
Rabbi Wallachie, the War Room Engine Room, the New York division.
All right, so I'm gonna cap it there. Yeah, I mean, I think this guy, like, all things considered, I think his perspective is probably one of the more reasonable and grounded perspectives that you're gonna hear, and yet that is still the conclusion. Like that's the point. That's why I wanted to share that. Okay. Because I do think that he probably does see eye to eye with us on many other issues. I don't know that for certain, but I mean, the fact that he was able to acknowledge very early on in this Iran war that Trump and Netanyahu have different incentives, that we have as Americans have different incentives than Israel, and yet I think he's giving you the truth right there. That from the Israeli perspective, Trump has betrayed them. That Trump is his pursuit of this deal, he wants a deal more than he wants a good outcome for Israel. That's the way they're looking at. That's the language and the rhetoric I've seen from basically all of the Zionist influencers, all the pro-Israel influencers have all said that Trump wants a deal so bad that it's clouding his judgment. This is terrible judgment. This is immoral to tell Israel not to respond. I have to remind this Wallachie guy that Israel did do like that 3,000 pager explosion where like 3,000 bombs went off and like kids were killed and stuff. And then at the funeral of these people, there were like walkie-talkies that exploded and killed more people. So, you know, when we talk about like the morality of war and like the ethics of war, which I think that's a very gray discussion, war is war. You know, over and over again, we see the Israeli rhetoric being that they expect their enemies to fight with one hand tied behind their back. And when that isn't the case, when they get, you know, when they fight with both their hands and it's closer to a fair fight, this is what happens. They throw a tantrum and they say, well, that's not fair. I want to kind of show you to show you the delusion, though. I wanted to this next clip is like 2 minutes long. But I wanted to show, because I think this is delusion. Like, this is the delusion. So after that segment, yesterday, we got this segment. Trump or Bannon brought on his ghost of base Patrick Henry with this guy named Kurt Mills, who I think has done a pretty reasonable job in his analysis. A lot of the analysis I've seen from him, for the most part, aligns with my own. I don't think he has a very favorable view of Trump and his relationship with the Zionists. I think he kind of buys into the idea that Trump is an actual Zionist puppet. I don't buy into that at all and never have. But here is the interaction between the two of them following that segment that we were just watching. I'm sorry, I forgot to share the screen. Boom. All right, let me start it over.
Israel is the most powerful country in the region. They have nuclear weapons, hundreds of them, which they don't concede that they do. They can protect themselves. And the action here, the relevant action, is that only one country in the Middle East is seeking to expand with American taxpayer dollars, and that is Israel. It is not Iran. It is not the Gulf.
Rabbi Wallachie, your thoughts?
Israel is not seeking to expand at all.
Israel come on, that's what's going on in Lebanon.
Hang on. Rabbi Wallachie, what is going on in Lebanon? The Greater Israel Project. The Greater Israel Project
is a figment of your imagination. There's no such thing as the Greater Israel Project. Israel seeks to defend its borders, and every single citizen of Israel, it's unbelievable. The only country in the world that has ever surrendered land for peace multiple times is now getting accused of wanting to expand itself. Israel wants to secure its borders. If Hezbollah did not set up tunnels and rocket launchers and militias along our northern border and started shelling our northern communities relentlessly, Israel would never set foot in Lebanon. And the day that Hezbollah is removed from Lebanon, Israel will withdraw every single boot on the ground from Lebanon. No one in Israel has any desire to own any piece of Lebanon or any piece of Syria. Frankly, we tried to give the Gaza Strip back to Egypt when we returned the Sinai to them. They refused to take it. Look, Israel doesn't want to expand its borders. Israel wants to defend its borders. And unfortunately, when you have these militias that set up right on our border and start firing at our civilians, we need to go in and do something about it when the sovereign nation, Lebanon in this case, does nothing about it. There's no, this is just...
We'll get into this daily. Hang on. We're going to wrap up.
Okay, so that was the end of that segment. You can see how triggered this guy's getting. And he's either delusional. Like what he just said right there is either delusional. This is what makes this conversation so difficult and so taxing. Because I don't know if he's being earnest when he says that. Like, I don't know if it's possible that him and his friends in Israel truly feel the way that he just said. Like they have that's probably true. That for the most part, they have no desire. They live in whichever town they live in. I have no idea where he lives, but let's just say he lives in Tel Aviv. It's like they live in Tel Aviv. They don't want to live in Lebanon, right? But they live in Tel Aviv. Okay, fine. They have no desire to own any piece of Lebanon. But what he just said is categorically false, because I can play any number of clips, and I'll just play this one right here that is just from the other day. Any number of clips of the current Israeli leadership saying the opposite of what he just said, where they say, this is our land that was given to us by God, whatever, 3,000, 6,000 years ago, whenever it was. This was given to us by God. It's our promise. It goes all the way up to Damascus and all the way over to the Euphrates River. This is our land. Now, he may not agree with that, right? I don't think every person in Israel agrees with that take. I think the religious zealots are the ones who are at the forefront of it. I think the settlers who go and set up these settlements on, Arab land, I think they're zealots too. But the fact that he's ignoring that reality, like he's either being deceptive or he's just extremely ignorant of the politics in his own country. And I find it really hard to believe a guy as polished as him and as informed as he appears to be, like when he says that at the beginning of the war that Israel and America have different perspectives, different incentives, different agenda. I find it really hard to believe that he doesn't understand who Itamar Ben Gavir is and Bezalel Smotrich. Here's Itamar Ben Gavir on Sunday, I believe. This was posted on Monday, but I'm pretty sure this is from Sunday. And this is in Hebrew. So I will turn off the sound and I will read you what he says. He says, the security of the citizens. Hold on, let's get rid of that. The security of the citizens of the state of Israel, above all else, a sovereign state, is not a contractor. I think in the description it says, he actually says, is not a subcontractor for any power. It is not bound by agreements that limit its ability to protect its people. Existential millenniums, I don't know what that is, but it must be a Hebrew word. We must not act from external pressure, but from the turtle of our conscience. I assume that that's a translation issue, but just as a person is obligated to do what is required to protect his home, the state of Israel is obligated to do everything to protect its citizens. And then he goes on to say, so him and Netanyahu go on to say, we are not pulling back from Lebanon. I think I have that clip pulled up here. Here is, again, I think this is the same speech, but this is certainly from the past few days. It might be from yesterday. But it says, quote, we must continue destroying the houses of the Lebanese. We must continue expelling Lebanese from southern Lebanon. We must keep responding decisively with the expulsion of the Lebanese population. And he goes on to say, we will not pull back from Lebanon. We will not pull back from Syria. Netanyahu said the same thing. Netanyahu said, with respect to Trump, we're not pulling back. The State Department revoked this guy's visa. I don't know if they revoked it or they just didn't renew it or whatever. I mean, this guy was in the U.S. a few months ago meeting with people. I want to say back in like December. He had to cancel his family vacation to the U.S. because he can't get his visa approved. So there is definitely trouble in paradise when it comes to the leadership in Israel and the leadership of the U.S. And look, this is where we're headed. We're headed to a bifurcation in American culture, and not everybody in the chat's going to agree with me, and that's fine. You don't have to agree with me. We don't have to agree on every single issue, but here is what we do have to agree on. You choose a country. You can't have two countries. You can't say I'm American and I'm Israeli, because at the end of the day, if there was ever a conflict between America and Israel, or let's just pick any other country, let's just say America and Mexico, right? If America and Mexico go to war, you got to pick one side. You can't be on both sides. You can be neutral. You can leave the continent and go be neutral, and just whichever side wins, you'll come back and pretend you were always on that side. I mean, people will call you a coward, but if you're going to participate and be involved in the conflict, you got to pick a side, right? Nobody's going to trust you if you're serving both sides. So you either pick Israel or you pick America. And for a long time, that has been a controversial thing to say, because people say, no. Israel and America are totally on the same, you can't support Israel, America without supporting Israel, etc. That kind of nonsense. That's not true. You have to pick one or the other. And as Wallachie said earlier, our interests are diverging. Israel has its own interests. It wants a war with Iran. It wants to fight Hezbollah. It wants to fight Hamas. Okay, fine. Good luck. I get it. They're firing missiles at you. You take offense to that. Go fight them. We're not paying for it. We're not sending you missiles. We're not sending you ammo. Go deal with it yourself. Because when Wallachie says we are on the cusp of victory with Hezbollah, not true, by the way. Not true at all. What he really is saying, because they've defined this all over and over again, true victory. You can go listen to any GOP congressman who's a Zionist will tell you this. Lindsey Graham, Rick Scott, whoever. True victory is disarming Hezbollah. That's what they say. Disarming Hezbollah means going door to door in southern Lebanon, but also probably, Syria, southern Syria as well, because I think they're in both places at this point. And disarming the population. These people own 50 caliber machine guns. They have more advanced weaponry than the average American patriot does. Okay. They have automatic weapons. They have 50 caliber machine guns. You're not going to disarm them. It's never going to happen. Tom Barrack said that. It's never going to happen. So the best you can do, best possible outcome, is a negotiated settlement, a peace. Okay. Now, You can fight a war before you get there, and you can maybe force them to submit to you. I don't think they're going to. I think they've made it very clear that no matter how many of them you kill, it's just going to increase their resolve. I think that's a natural human response. Just like with Israel, the more people they kill in Israel, the more Israel wants to go fight them. So all you can do is make peace with them and accept the fact that you're never going to disarm them, and you got to learn to live side by side. That's the best you're going to do. But the idea that we America have to be beholden to you, Israeli, and we have to follow you into whatever battle you want to go fight, that's bullshit. And people in the chat who say, well, what would you do if Mexico was bombing Miami? I'd probably go fight Mexico. Honestly, yeah, that probably would be the case. If China came and invaded my neighborhood, yeah, I'd probably be out there fighting the tanks. But that's not what's happening here. It's Israel and Hezbollah. So that's Israel's problem. That's not my problem. It's not our problem. We have enough issues to resolve. So you can't equate those two things, because Israel is not part of the United States. No matter how much you want it to be, it's never going to happen. It's not part of the United States. So now let's go to some of these comments from Trump, because Trump is over at the G7. We've had a lot of developments since we did the show on Friday, of course. Let's look at this one. Trump, I'm not happy with how Israel has fought Hezbollah. Syria should do so instead. U.S. President Donald Trump criticizes Israel's conduct against Hezbollah and says that Syria should take over the fight against the Iran-backed terror group in Lebanon. He says that the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah has gone on for too long and suggests that Israel is killing too many non-combatants. Quote, Israel is fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed, Trump says in remarks at the G7 Summit of Global Leaders in France. Quote, and you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses and they're not all Hezbollah. That I can tell you. Trump later says, quote, I'm not happy with the way Israel has handled themselves with Lebanon and with Hezbollah. They should have been able to do the job faster. It just goes on forever. And when that happens, it throws a negative light on the big deal. And that's the deal with Iran. He reiterates that he was upset about Israel's strike on Hezbollah in Beirut on Sunday, shortly before the interim peace deal between Iran and the U.S. was announced. Quote, I didn't like where 2 hours before we were signing the agreement that there was an attack in Lebanon and Beirut. He refers to Ahmed al-Shara, the president of Syria, saying that he would more effectively lead the fight against Hezbollah. Quote, I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah, Trump says, because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. He says of Shara, this is Jelani, this is the former ISIS Al-Qaeda leader. Quote, he's very capable and he's very good. He's been very good to me, or for me. He's protected everything that I've asked for. Quote, if Israel can't do the job without killing everyone else, he'll do the job. Syria will do the job, Trump says. So Hezbollah, here's this other article. Hezbollah has made it clear that Iran has pledged to them to pursue the IDF withdrawal from Lebanon in nuclear talks with the U.S. Quote, Hezbollah has, well, not quote, but the article says, Hezbollah has received assurances from its backer Iran that it will demand a withdrawal of Israeli troops from Lebanon in its next phase of talks with the United States. Hezbollah's media relations office tells Reuters an IDF withdrawal will be the result of, and not a precondition for, continuing talks between Tehran and Washington following the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the two countries on Friday. Hezbollah says the group tells Reuters that there will be, quote, no nuclear deal between Iran and the United States unless the Israelis withdraw from Lebanon. And so that caveat is actually pretty important. He says, Hezbollah says, an IDF withdrawal will be the result of and not a precondition for continuing talks. So they're saying, we're not expecting the IDF to walk out of here tomorrow before we go and sit down with Trump. We're expecting to go sit down with Trump and talk. And then when we're done talking, whatever the final agreement looks like, this is phase 2, part of that agreement will be y'all leaving our land, y'all leaving Lebanon. Wallachie, by the way, just said that they don't want to be there, according to him. I think he's only speaking, if he's being honest, he's only speaking for part of the population. He's not speaking for the political elite. He's not speaking for the current government, its current leadership. he's not speaking for the Zionists, because you will hear the Zionists say, in order to secure the future of our future security for Israel, we have to have a buffer zone between Israel and its neighbors. We need to have a DMZ like North Korea and South Korea have, where nobody lives there and nobody goes there. It's a no man's land, except we know what that looks like because they've tried that before in the past. And of course, Israeli settlements start popping up, and before you know it, that land becomes formally part of Israel. So there's no trust, obviously. There's no trust that that's ever going to be honored. So they're never going to agree with that. The only agreement they're going to agree to is the IDF permanently leaving and not coming back. Will Israel accept that? That remains to be seen. Maybe Wallachie would accept that, but the people in power are not going to accept that. So I've already done a couple shows today. I'm sure maybe some of you have watched Badlands Daily. I was just on the Daily Herald with John. So as I explained before, my take on what happened on Sunday with this UFC fight, which was great, I think that was a turning point. I think that was a milestone in the entire zeitgeist where Trump is officially turning the page into the next chapter. Ever since then, he has not threatened Iran. Iran has not been threatened since that night. Other than just to say, if Iran were to relent on the deal, then yeah, we would go back to what we were doing before, of course. But I mean, that's kind of, does that need to be said out loud? I think that's just kind of understood. He's not putting out posts saying we're going to bomb them back into the Stone Age. I think we've left that chapter behind. I could be wrong. Been wrong before. But I think that is that's where we are. I want to play this video because I think this summarizes it. Let's see. So this, okay. So this is him meeting with, so he leaves the fight on Sunday night, right? Leaves the UFC fight. I mean, it ends at like 1 a.m. I mean, we were covering on Badlands. It was like midnight or 1 a.m. or something like that. And then I think at like 2:30 or 3, Dan Scavino posted a video, had like a timestamp on the video, like a TikTok video or something, of them getting in the vehicles in front of the White House at the vehicle pool and driving to the airport because he's like leaving for France to go to the G7. So within 2 hours of the fight ending, Trump packed up his stuff, gets on Air Force One, and flies to France to attend the G7. Yesterday, so he wakes up in France. Yesterday, he meets with Emmanuel Macron, the leader of France. And this is significant because France, Lebanon, and Syria were once part, or not part of, but they were territories given to France by the winners of World War I. The people who won World War I, which are the same people who created the Federal Reserve, they divvied up the Middle East. They divvied up the Ottoman Empire. Iraq, Jordan, and Palestine went to Britain. Syria and Lebanon went to France. The purpose of that was to keep Russia out of the Middle East because the two militaries together would have been enough of a deterrent. And then, of course, Palestine was given to Israel about 30 years later by Britain. Let's play this clip.
Very signed. The deal's I'm very happy to say very signed. The deal's all signed. And the strait is already partially opened. As you know, they're doing a little hunting for a couple of mines that they've already found. But it's essentially ships are starting to go out now. On Friday, it'll be completely opened. We got along very well with Iran. It's a different set of leaders. As you know, the first set is gone. The second set is gone. And we found the third set to be very smart, strong, very smart. But we ended up making a deal. I felt badly that we had to go back on the attack for 2 nights. And I thought a third, but we made it before that happened.
Yeah, so I felt bad that we had to go back on the attack, right? Maybe a third, didn't have to do it. We made the deal before those attacks, okay? And then backing up, let's back up a little bit further because, Friday was the last show we did. Sunday morning, we wake up to the news that Netanyahu, that the IDF had attacked the Beirut, Hezbollah in Beirut. They killed, they were going after some Hezbollah leaders on Trump's birthday. On the morning of this big event that has been promoted for, the past year. I don't know how long they've been promoting the event, but they've been promoting this event for a long time. This is a big day. This is a big symbolic day for a number of reasons. And they chose that day to attack Beirut, right? And that's how Trump started his morning. And that led to him contacting Barack Ravid and telling Barack Ravid that Netanyahu has no judgment and he's an idiot, and Trump's not happy with him, and he let Netanyahu know that. That's the news we get on Sunday. We then get the news that Iran did not respond, even though they were planning on it. They put out the news saying that okay, we're definitely going to retaliate. You attacked Beirut. We always said if you attack Beirut, then we will definitely be responding to that. And according to JD Vance, let me see if I can pull that video up. JD Vance says that Iran had agreed to Trump to not attack and pulled back and said, okay, we won't attack if you're saying we shouldn't attack. We trust you. We're going to trust that without this attack, this attack won't be necessary. We're not going to attack. So Iran is now cooperating with President Trump, and Israel is not. That's where we are right now, is that Iran is now cooperating. This is as of Sunday. Iran, and I think JD Vance may have made this announcement. He may have disclosed this on Fox News or something on Monday. So the timeline here is that Sunday we get this flip where Iran is now, and this isn't the first time Iran has cooperated with Trump. We've seen this happen, going back to Soleimani, when Soleimani was killed and Iran called him and said, hey, we got to do this saving face attack. We're just going to fire missiles into the desert. Don't sweat it. Trump said, yeah, no big deal. We've seen them collaborate and cooperate before. But now what it is it's a flip, because Israel was being defiant of Trump. They were being the child throwing the temper tantrum and attacking Beirut, the one thing Trump told him not to do. Iran agrees not to retaliate and to listen to Trump. So they invert, they flip. Demonstrating that Iran, I think, Trump is demonstrating that Iran can cooperate and can listen to him. And that's how you build trust, is little moments, exercises like that, where they're listening, Israel's not. We also get Trump throughout the weekend saying this is not going to impact our, what happened on Sunday is not going to impact the deal. We're going to, there was those 2 nights of attacks, purported attacks that we did against Iran. I think that was Friday, Saturday. Trump said that wouldn't impact the deal. The deal was still going to move forward. He said that the attack, Israel's attack against Beirut, wasn't going to impact the deal from Iran's perspective. And then he also said that he was expecting on Sunday for Iran to respond. He says if Iran responds, that's not going to impact the deal either. And then Iran ends up not responding and not firing missiles back. So Trump is telling you the whole time, we're not going to let this impact our deal. What Israel and Iran are doing right now is not going to impact our deal. That's his way of telling you that that things are not contingent on Israel's behavior or contingent on Israel's conflict with Iran. If Israel and Iran want to keep fighting, we're going to keep making our deal. Y'all do what you want. So then we get this other, from the same moment with Emmanuel Macron, we get this other moment, which CENTCOM played. I'm going to play it. It's only 30 seconds.
Up here from a few countries, you'd be a great country to do it. You never know what happens, but I think it's going to be open, and I think it's going to be free sailing. We do want to see if we can straighten out the the Lebanon thing, because it just seems to just never end. And that's a mini version of what we were doing, and it should not be tough. It should not be tough. So Hezbollah, we have to have a little talk with them.
Okay, so it's interesting because Trump goes and he meets with Macron, right? He's meeting with Macron because Macron's the host of this G7 event. So he's meeting with the leader of France because the meeting is happening in France. That's just common sense. You're going to meet with the leader who's hosting you in his country. That's a basic formality. Then instead of going and meeting with the other members of the G7, he turns around and he meets, because really it's like the G7 plus. They end up inviting other people who they want to do business with, right? And so this year, all the Arab countries get invited. You'll recall that I think it was during the Biden administration in 2024. This was back when they were trying to negotiate the peace deal with Zelensky, and Zelensky went to Saudi Arabia right before he went to the G7 because Zelensky was invited. MBS was invited. MBS is like, nah, I'm not coming, but Zelensky went. So instead of going and meeting with the other European leaders or the other members of the G7, Trump turns around and he meets with all like the Arabs. He meets with MBZ from UAE. He meets with Tamim from Qatar. Here's the longer version of the clip I played this morning with Tamim. I believe this is with Tamim, where Trump is asked about his relationship with Netanyahu.
Are you frustrated with Netanyahu, sir?
No, we had a great relationship. We're talking about some end details. I didn't like that he did an attack based on there's a very minor little thing with some drones that were released, and he ends up doing I saw that attack. I saw where that bomb went. Did you see what happened? That was a vicious, that was too much. You can do too much also. But we've had a very effective relationship. Without the United States, there would be no Israel. Without me, there would be no Israel, because no other president was willing to do what I did. I've had a great relationship with Bibi, but now Bibi has to be more responsible with respect to Lebanon. Lebanon used to be a great country. It was a country where you had professors, doctors, lawyers. The great intellect was in Lebanon. Now it's terrible. I would say of all countries, they've been treated the worst. And they can't defend themselves. And they have Hezbollah, which is a problem for them. So now I'm not happy with the way Israel has handled themselves with Lebanon and with Hezbollah. They should have been able to do the job faster. It just goes on forever. And when that happens, it throws a negative light on the big deal, and that's the deal with Iran. So when you ask me about Bibi, an unbelievable relationship. But Israel would have been blown up a long time ago had I not gotten involved. Two things I did. I terminated the Iran nuclear deal. Barack Hussein Obama sold out Israel for Iran. He went to Iran. He sold them out. How anybody can vote for this guy or the party, the Democrats I call them, because they're dumb. They're dumb people. That's number one. How anybody can vote for them. And the second was the B-2 bombers, just totally destroyed. So they had the right, the JCPOA. I watch these politicians. I watched a Senator Reid that nobody ever heard of the other day. Well, this deal is the same as the deal with Barack Obama. No, this deal is a wall to a nuclear weapon. His deal was a road to a nuclear weapon. My deal, they can't have a nuclear. They get blown up. If they have a nuclear weapon, they get blown up. In his deal, they were allowed to have a nuclear weapon. And in all fairness to Bibi, I remember very well, Bibi came to Washington and begged Obama not to make that deal. And Obama was on the side of Iran, not Israel. And he made the deal. That deal was a disaster.
By the way, savage. That's a savage. Trump's brilliant because right now we're going to look in a minute at how Netanyahu is being attacked internally by like his domestic enemies, his political enemies. Trump's making Netanyahu look weak right here because he's going and he's saying Netanyahu came and he begged Obama not to do the Iran nuclear deal and failed. And Obama, who is universally recognized around the world as a weakling, everybody recognized that Obama was a weakling and the way he handled himself geopolitically was pathetic. He wouldn't listen to Netanyahu. Now, my personal opinion is the Iran nuclear deal, Netanyahu was a part of that. And the reason that what really it was it was a money laundering operation where money was being laundered through the central bank of Iran and other places, Iraq, the UAE, other places, to get that money to these proxy forces, ISIS and otherwise, and others, so that they can continue their operations, because their operations are critical to like the Zionist cause and the neocon cause. When the neocons and the Zionists can point around the world and say, look at all of these terrorist groups that are operating around the world. We need more security. We need more military. We need more whatever, war, like forever war. They need the boogeyman. So they're funding the boogeyman. I personally think that the Ukraine war was that too. I think the hundreds of billions that we sent to Ukraine were really being diverted to fund a lot of these proxies to continue the destabilization in certain countries so that you can promote forever war and have, cooperative governments from the deep state's perspective in control. Let's continue.
Disaster. I terminated that deal. And if I didn't terminate, and was very tough after the termination, and if I didn't do that, Howard knows better than anybody. If I didn't terminate that deal, I believe that Israel wouldn't be here right now. And the second one was what we did with respect to the nuclear dust, as I call it, right? We blew it up. The mountain collapsed on top. You can't get to it. And they were 2 weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it on Israel, and I hate to say it, and probably the rest of the Middle East, because they had all those missiles aimed at the Emir, at Saudi Arabia, at UAE, at Kuwait, at Bahrain. I mean, the biggest surprise in this whole thing, I didn't think you guys would. I thought he would aim at Israel, but he didn't aim at Israel, much less. He aimed at your countries. And actually, that was a mistake for them because it brought us, these countries, in particular the 5 countries, it brought us, he even hit Turkey once. I never understood it. Nobody's going to understand it. That's the problem. They're totally irrational people. And those people are now gone. And I think Iran has rational leadership now. But you wouldn't have, if it weren't for the United States of America, with me, because Obama was the opposite, Israel would not exist right now. Israel would have been blown off the face of the earth, 100%. And every smart person in Israel knows that. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, so again, there's some shade being thrown at Netanyahu here, where Trump is like, Netanyahu is not the savior of Israel. I'm the savior of Israel. And the Israeli people need to remember that. Without me, Israel would have already been destroyed. Which again, that's a banner. That's like a war cry for the Zionists and the MAGA Zionists is that we defend Israel no matter what. But when you really walk that to its logical conclusion from the Israeli perspective, that means Israel can't defend itself. And I think that's inflating a lot of hubris. It's inflating a lot of ego. Bruised ego, because they want to prove otherwise. They want to prove they can stand on their own 2 feet. Netanyahu has been saying for months, I want to make Israel a superpower. I want to make it its own independent superpower where it's not dependent on the U.S. for military aid or financial aid. We don't want to be like a dependent state anymore, a vassal. We want to be our own country. So Trump again he's giving Netanyahu's enemies plenty to work with in terms of putting together campaign ads, because Trump is, I think, widely beloved in Israel for what he's done. I think that a lot of Israelis are going to start to sour on him because of this. And we'll get into that here in a minute. Before we do, I want to look at the Strait of Hormuz, because if we go to look at Trump's True Social, he's been putting out some pretty interesting stuff. All we have to do is go back to let's see. Right here. Okay, so let's start with the UFC fight. He says the UFC at the White House last night was incredible. The weather was scheduled to be horrendous, and it turned out to be perfect. So much for weather predicting. The fighters were outstanding. Bo Nickel, Justin Gaethje, Cyril Gane, Sean O'Malley, Josh Hokett, Mauricio Ruffy, and Diego Lopez were all unbelievable. Most people have never seen anything like that kind of human speed and power before. The White House never looked more beautiful. The setting was unsurpassed. Congratulations to Dana White and his unbelievable UFC. One of the most exciting days in the history of our fabled White House, President Donald J. Trump. The amazing part about that whole situation was the fact that it was a blue-collar sport that was being brought in there. It wasn't, as CanCon pointed out, it wasn't boxing, it wasn't golf, it wasn't tennis, right? It was a blue collar sport, cage fighting based. I mean, it was cage fighting. That's what MMA is, and it really, I think it was a stick in the eye of the DC elites, who I can't imagine very many DC elites are watching MMA, but the fact that Trump went in there and hosted this event right in the center of their beloved city was great. So then Trump posts about the January 4th, the Lincoln Memorial and Washington Monument in beautiful and safe Washington, D.C. are going to host the most spectacular Trump rally of them all, a tribute to America, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This huge celebration will honor our country's people, spirit, strength, resolve, and triumphs. With the backdrop of the Lincoln Memorial and surrounding the beautiful new reflecting pool, more than 300 members of our strong and talented military bands, orchestras, and ceremonial units will perform patriotic melodies, American classics, with my playlist, which will have none of those people that put you to sleep and constantly complain. As we celebrate, I love that it's his playlist. It's his Spotify. As we celebrate our country and rally into the next 250 years, this ensemble will be the largest formation of joint military music and ceremonial performance in history. There will be incredible flyovers and air shows featuring our top military pilots and equipment, and I will deliver keynote remarks that you will not want to miss. To conclude the program and commemorate this historic occasion, I will be launching what will be the largest fireworks show in history right here in our nation's capital. Do not miss it. See you on July 4th in Washington, D.C. President Donald J. Trump. Okay, I thought this was going to be at Mount Rushmore. It's not. Okay, so I was wrong about that. It's going to be at the White House, or I guess the Lincoln Memorial, and it's going to be in D.C. Okay, so the reason I went back, though, is I wanted to look at the Strait of Hormuz, the Iran stuff. Where are we? Right here. So then he talks about the open border policy of Joe Biden. He posted just the news article, Trump scores once elusive peace deal with Iran, easing oil prices ahead of elections. All right, let's play this. This might be him speak. I don't know if this is him speaking or him just covering something on Fox News. Let me see. If it's him speaking, I'll play it. If not, we'll skip it. Okay, never mind. I think this is just Fox News covering it, but it's not playing it.
Let's bring in Victoria Coates, Vice President of National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage.
Yeah, we don't need to listen to that. Okay, this is the Strait of Hormuz. He says ships are starting to move, many loaded up with oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. They are going along the southern quote-unquote highway, which is totally safe, secure, and pristine. There are other areas of travel also, President Donald J. Trump. And then this is what I want to look at. This article. This is from yesterday. U.S. counts far more Hormuz ship transits than commercial tracking data shows. And so here's the article. This article is from June 5th. You can see it right there. June 5th. It's citing Bloomberg, but it says American forces have counted nearly 1,000 commercial vessel transits in and out of the Strait of Hormuz in the last 2 months, according to an official familiar with U.S. Central Command operations, a figure that's higher than private sector estimates that rely mostly on ship transponders. Military analysts measured the number of ship passages since a ceasefire took effect between the U.S. and Iran on April 8th. using continual air, sea, and space surveillance deployed as part of the war against Iran, the official said, asking not to be identified to discuss data that hasn't been made public. The bulk of the vessels are large cargo and container ships, and the figure doesn't count smaller craft, such as traditional DOWs, they added. What is that? DHOWS. Sorry, my curiosity is piqued here. Okay, it's like a sloop. It's like a little sailing vessel. Okay. All right, let's go back. The figure is still far below the more than 100 ships passing daily through the vital waterway for oil and gas from the Persian Gulf before President Trump launched a war against Iran in late February, which effectively shuttered the Strait of Hormuz and sent global energy prices soaring. But the new U.S. tally suggests commercial traffic in the strait has been at least slightly busier than previously believed. A Bloomberg tally of ship tracking data using responders counts just over 650 transits since April 8th, 400 outbound and about 260 inbound. The U.S. count likely reflects, at least in part, the rising number of so-called dark transit ships are making with transponders turned off to help avoid detection by Iran as U.S. forces attempt to get traffic moving again amid a rising outcry about the worsening impact of the strait's closure on the global economy. Asked on Friday how much oil was getting out of Hormuz, Trump said, a lot. I don't want to say how many, but a lot. The president told reporters traveling aboard Air Force One, quote, a lot of oil is coming into the world that people don't even know about. And that's why it's at $97 a barrel instead of $300 a barrel. U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on February 28th quickly. Yeah, and then it goes into the history. So Bernie Bright and I talked about this on the news brief, the Badlands Blitz on Saturday, that's exactly what we were talking about, that the price of oil doesn't act, while it's gone up, it doesn't actually reflect a full closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which Trump has been saying the whole time. It would be $300 a barrel if the Strait of Hormuz, if there was no oil coming out. And so this does two things. Number one, anyone you're following on social media who's one of these OSINT douchebags, like the guys who have, the plane fags. Look, we love the plane fags from back in the day of Q Research. We love the plane fags. The boat fags, they're okay. But anyone who's sitting there showing you maps of commercial data that they pay for a subscription to access this data, they're full of it because they're not even getting accurate data. Even Bloomberg is figuring out that hundreds of more ships than the data shows on OSINT trackers, which is open source intelligence. That's not accurate. Trump is telling you, or the CENTCOM, at least this leaker from CENTCOM is telling you that it's actually 1,000 ships. It could be even higher than that, though. Like, all that matters is that more ships than what is being publicly reported based on open source intelligence, open source data. For all we know, the Strait of Hormuz could be fully open and just operational, and we're just being told a story because of the transponder data, which could be manipulated. I'm not suggesting that that's what's actually happening, but I am suggesting that it's possible that's what's happening. And we got to keep an open mind about that. A lot of this could just be narrative driven. Let's see. I think there was one more. No, that was the last one from his Truth Social. So then I wanted to go back to the comments that Trump was making at G7. Because again, like the G7 is like the meeting of the the largest economies, the leaders of the largest economies in the world. And so the Strait of Hormuz is obviously going to be a big talking point, a sticking point for a lot of them, and what is actually happening. And we've gotten a lot of back and forth from these pundits that they don't know a damn thing. Nobody knows what's going on. And that's what's frustrating everybody in terms of this memorandum of understanding. Here's a lot of people are saying, this is going to, Iran's going to charge a toll. Iran's going to charge. That's been in my replies all on X when I'm talking about Iran becoming our great ally. Everyone say, well, they can't be a great ally if they're charging us to go through the Strait of Hormuz. Here's Trump responding to that. That rhetoric has been put out there by the Zionists.
We couldn't let that happen. You couldn't let that happen. And they won't have a nuclear weapon. Now, in addition to that, the Strait is going to be open toll-free. And it's toll-free beyond the 60 days. It's not, somebody said, oh, it's toll-free for 6. No. It's toll-free, period. When it opens permanently, it'll be toll-free.
Yeah, so toll-free. It's toll-free permanently. Toll-free permanently. And I love the fact that Trump said, he came out and said, we're going to just read the whole thing on Friday. I'm going to read the whole thing from start to finish. So there's no fake news. You can't lie to people and tell people what's in it, because they've already started doing that. They've already tried to like, seed narratives that like are getting people triggered. There's lots of mis and disinformation out there. Trump came out days ago and said, don't believe anything that's in the media about the bullet points from the terms of the deal, because it's all fake news. The fact that he's waiting until Friday, to read this thing and not just coming out and doing it like on Air Force One on the way to France, indicates to me that he wants people to spin out between now and Friday. A lot can happen between now and Friday. And there's going to be a lot of people spinning out, crashing out, turning on Trump, getting angry about what they're seeing. And I'm here for it, because this is a necessary. And when I say that, I'm talking about the influencers. I'm talking about the people who are being paid by Israel and their $730 million Hezbollah budget to push Israeli propaganda, literally. And I'm here for it. I'm here to see them.
He changed his shirt 3 times before he left. Tried on a smile that didn't.
Everybody saves.
Everybody.
Even me?
Especially you.
You mean I just have to use a promo code to get the discount?
Phoebe truly is an idiot.
Hi, fellas. What year is it?
Soft disclosures for everybody.
Badlanders, you are all familiar with Loaded Gun Coffee. They have been longtime supporters of Badlands, and you may have met them in person at GART. But did you know they are a veteran-run, family-owned shop? They have a veteran-run, family-owned shop in Lake Havasu, Arizona. Every bag of their whole bean coffee delivers a high-octane, patriotic punch of flavor. With a long family history of commitment to freedom, every bag is a testament of pride and honor. From the skilled farmers who cultivate each blend to their roasters that handpick the finest coffee beans from around the world, Loaded Gun Coffee has mastered their unique brewing methods, resulting in the best-tasting coffee around. This coffee is smooth and delicious, the perfect way to start your mornings. Get over to badlandsmedia.tv/loaded and use promo code BADLANDS to get 10% off your order. If you are in the Lake Havasu area, stop in their newly renovated store and say hi. That is badlandsmedia.tv/loaded, promo code BADLANDS. Stay loaded with Loaded Gun Coffee. And check out their story on the episode 12 of America First Stories. What's really on your plate? Grocery store beef could have dozens of DNA profiles. Chicken labeled organic or natural, often just processed and shipped in bulk from the same 2 companies, no matter the store or the label. At Rattlesnake, they control every step: raising, aging, packing, no subsidies. No big ag middlemen, just real, honest meat that tastes like it should. Order straight from the farmer. Order from Rattlesnake Meat Company today. Head to rattlesnakemeats.com/Badlands, promo code Badlands to get started. And check out their story on episode 11 of America First Stories on the Badlands Media Rumble page. I'm just trying to get rid of the stuff that we've already gone over, or I don't think we'll end up getting to. There's just so much good stuff, though. It's wild. Okay, so real quick, we'll keep talking about this a little bit, and this Iran-Israel thing and the dynamics at play. We're going to shift gears slightly to look at a little more of the geopolitical fallout, the political what's happening around the world in relation to this. I want to go back and play this video. I can't recall. I know we played this on Daily and we played it on John's show. I can't recall if we already played it here. I'm just going to play it again so we can talk about it. Or maybe we played a clip of a larger clip that had this contained. Let's watch this again.
Israel's fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah, that I can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah. Because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. And I didn't like Syria. I didn't like where 2 hours before we're signing the agreement, that there was an attack in Lebanon, in Beirut. It wasn't like in the southern side, and it was in Beirut. I did not like that. I let them know that. I didn't like it, not at all. But I think that Syria, he's pulled that country together amazingly quickly. He's very capable. And he's been very good for me. He's protected everything that I've asked for, he's done. And if Israel can't do the job without killing everyone else, he'll do the job. Syria will do the job.
Yeah, so this is an interesting development here because, number one, Trump is bringing up the argument that has long been levied at the IDF, which is that the IDF indiscriminately kills civilians in order to kill what they describe as terrorists, the enemy combatants. And that's a problem. That's humanitarian crisis. And that's where the allegation or the accusation of genocide comes from, is when you're killing hundreds of people in order to kill one guy. You blow up a whole apartment building to get one or two or a few guys. Violates all sorts of procedures and standards that, I hate using the word international law because I don't know if there really is international law. I think there's just the might makes right, the strong do, and the weak will suffer, the will of the strong, as Putin and Trump have said many times. But it's interesting that he is doing two things here. Number one, he's bringing that up. Like, he's acknowledging to everyone now that he knows this. He recognizes it. I'm sure he's acknowledged it and understood it from the very beginning, but he's playing the cards close to the chest. Israel can't shy away from it now because President Trump has said this is happening. Just like you can't shy away from the fact that the Strait of Hormuz, all these ships that we don't know about are moving through the Strait of Hormuz. You can't shy away from that because President Trump has now posted about it. So you can't pretend like this is a made up, Hamas propaganda or Hezbollah propaganda or whatever. Trump is openly saying that this is happening. The other thing he's doing is he's pumping the tires of Jelani, of the leader of Syria, who I believe, I think he was probably a deep state puppet. I think this guy was probably literally a television character who was cast from central casting to star in these films of beheadings and everything, which I understand it, they all call him a head chopper. He was doing this when he was part of Al Qaeda and when he was part of ISIS. To what extent those videos in hindsight were even real, that can be debated. I'm not saying the people who were in the videos weren't killed. I'm saying were the videos that we were seeing, was that a Hollywood production, a Hollywood version of them being, they were killed elsewhere? I don't know. Was this guy actually the one chopping off their heads, or was he a stand-in for other people doing it? Either way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if this guy is the most evil, wicked person ever, or if he's just an actor like from that movie Iron Man 3, where it's literally like a stage actor playing the role of a terrorist. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle of those two. The point is that this guy is originally was a darling of Israel. Remember when Assad was first overthrown in December of 24, Israel was ecstatic. The Zionists and the neocons were all super excited. And that's what drove me to say that this is going to be the end of, people like Turning Point USA, because if they're going to get behind this, if they're going to support the fact that like an ISIS leader is now the leader of Syria, that's going to make things very challenging for them moving forward, because they're basically throwing their weight behind a guy who they claim to be all against ISIS and against Al Qaeda. And now they're going to support this guy. I think he was in their camp. And then as time went on throughout 2025, it became more and more clear that he wasn't doing what Netanyahu asked of him. And he was standing up and refusing things that Netanyahu was requesting from him. And now, we have like open warfare in parts of southern Syria, and Jelani calling it out, and Jelani requesting assistance from other countries, going to the UN and bringing it to the UN that Israel's trying to set up airspace over Syria, like a no-fly zone. And remember, Jelani he has two handlers. His handlers are Erdogan in Turkey and MBS in Saudi Arabia. More, I think, Erdogan, it seems like, but Saudi Arabia certainly has influence over him. The same as with Lebanon. I think the Lebanese president, Aoun is his name, President Aoun, when he won his election, a year or two ago, everyone, like all the media was reporting that he was a Saudi puppet. Like he was Saudi's guy. He was Saudi's handpicked candidate for Lebanon. So that's really interesting. So you have like the Lebanese and the Syrian leaders are proxies for the other leaders in the territory, or in the region rather. And both of these leaders, Erdogan and MBS, are the closest allies that Trump has basically in the Middle East. And that brings us back to the G7. So the G7, Trump is there. He meets with the leader of France, who's the host. And then he goes and he meets with, we played a clip of him meeting with Tamim. We played a clip of him meeting with MBZ. Tamim is the leader of Qatar. MBZ is the leader of the UAE. Neither of these countries are part of the G7. So instead of meeting with leaders from the G7, he's meeting with like the observing attendants, like the people who are basically invited to kind of sit on the sidelines and watch while the more important economies, right, discuss how the world is going to be run. It's very funny. And you got the slight against the other people is definitely notable. Okay. And I'm going to see what, so I'm not trying to go back and forth, but there's just a lot to cover with this Israel thing. This thing is taking over. Yeah, and I'm not seeing any. Oh, this is interesting. Okay. So Zelensky walks in. I'm going to turn this music off they added. Zelensky walks in and Trump, kind of turns his back to him. That is, body language. Trump does his body language thing all the time. Zelensky definitely looks a little slighted. That's interesting. It's hilarious that Zelensky was invited to this because Trump tried to invite Putin. Like he was asked, would you be happy to see Putin there? And he was like, yeah, like why shouldn't Putin be there? They used to be a part of this thing. He criticized the Biden during the Biden administration. He was like, why isn't Putin at the G7? Russia's a very important part of the world. They should be there. Here's Putin holds a phone call with Trump on Sunday. Putin wished Trump a happy 80th birthday as the two leaders discussed Iran, Ukraine, and U.S.-Russia relations. Russian President Vladimir Putin wished his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump a happy 80th birthday during a phone call. Presidential aide Yuri Yushkov has told journalists Trump was touched by the greeting, and the two leaders spoke for about an hour. That's a long phone call. In a friendly and open manner, the official added. Trump was particularly appreciative of the gesture, Yushakov said, noting that Putin was the first foreign leader to call and give his best wishes on Sunday. That's amazing that the Russian aide would know that. How does the Russian aide know that Putin was the first one to call? That's amazing. Putin also thanked Trump for his Russia Day greeting earlier this week, adding that the American president's message conveyed a feeling of respect for the Russian people. The two presidents discussed a wide range of pressing international issues, including the memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran, as well as the Ukraine conflict, Yushakov said. Trump said that he expected the results of the talks with Tehran to be made public later on Sunday and thanked Moscow for its engagement in the negotiating process and assistance in finding, quote unquote, constructive solutions to the conflict between the U.S. and Iran, Yushakov pointed out. So sounds like Trump's being pretty open about, and there's other reports about this as well, that Russia was involved in this deal with Iran. I believe China is also being credited by Trump for it. We'll look at that in a minute. Trump called for a speedy cessation of hostilities in the Ukraine conflict and said that he was ready to influence Kyiv and its European backers, including during the upcoming G7 summit later this month, the Kremlin aide said. Putin responded by saying that continued Ukrainian strikes on Russian civilian infrastructure impeded efforts to reach a settlement. He maintained that attacks targeting civilians would not change the Ukrainian military's dire situation on the front line. Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky and his European backers only suggest options that would prolong the conflict and extend hostilities, he said. Commenting on Vladimir Zelensky's recent call for a personal meeting, Putin reiterated that the Ukrainian leader can come to Moscow if he wants to talk. Yeah, I'm sure that would go over well. Putin and Trump also agreed that the U.S. President's special envoy, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who are currently involved in talks with Tehran, would visit Moscow in the near future, according to Yushakov. The last phone call between the two presidents took place in late April, when they also discussed the Ukraine conflict and the situation in the Middle East. In May, Yushakov told journalists that Putin and Trump could meet in person on the sidelines of the APEC summit in China this November. Trump also hinted at a possible trip to Russia earlier this year, telling journalists he would do whatever is necessary to help settle the Ukraine conflict. The Kremlin said at the time that Putin was ready to host the American president. God, it would be amazing. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but it would be amazing because Trump's going to Turkey. I think from here he's going to Turkey for the NATO conference, which is in Turkey this year. It would be amazing if Iran showed up. I mean, Turkey could host Iran, I think. I think Turkey could confidently host Iran. And if Trump and the Iranians met, that would be appointment television. That would make people's heads explode, which is exactly why I want to see it happen. Whatever triggers the most people so they get out of their comfort zone, that's what I want to see. Okay, so we'll hit this story. Yeah, we'll hit this story. Well, maybe before we go there, because that's going to lead into my transition. Let's go to this one about, since this is more purely G7. G7 no longer runs the world, according to the Canadian Prime Minister. Mark Carney pointed to India's G7 presence to drive home the point that a wider perspective is needed. The Group of Seven, that's what it stands for, not Global Seven. The Group of Seven countries no longer run the world, member Canada has said. Prime Minister Mark Carney said the presence of countries such as India at the gathering of the world's most advanced economies and democracies highlights the G7's acknowledgement of the need for a wider global perspective. Quote, it's a recognition that the G7, if it ever did run the world, no longer runs the world or pretends to, the Canadian leader said at an interaction at Trinity College, Dublin, ahead of the G7 conclave in Evian, France. The grouping comprises Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the UK and the US, in addition to the European Union, which participates in meetings as a non-enumerated member. Carney pointed out that tackling major global challenges requires wider international cooperation and perspectives beyond the group's traditional members. The G7 summit is taking place shortly after Iran and the US struck a peace deal ending months-long hostilities that have paralyzed shipping in the Gulf of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical waterways. The deal is to be formally signed this coming Friday. The summit, which is already underway, also includes partner countries Brazil, Egypt, Kenya, and the Gulf states, including the United Arab Emirates, apart from India, which holds the BRICS presidency this year. Carney said these countries provide a broader perspective and a broader element of the solution to discussions on key global challenges. This underscores the key role of emerging and middle powers in addressing global issues, he said, adding the expanded gathering could formulate the contours of a new world order. Oh, there's that word. President Donald Trump, who is attending the G7, is expected to hold talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi amid strained relations over trade tariffs and the killing of Indian soldiers by U.S. forces enforcing the Iran blockade. Carney's comments come on the heels of Modi and Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico backing comprehensive reforms of multilateral institutions, including the UN Security Council. The structure of the UN was decided in the aftermath of World War II, but is increasingly seen as out of step with the modern world, where countries such as India have increased their economic and military clout. Russia and China have also been left out of the G7. This is interesting because the G7 was the G8 for a long time was viewed as like the World Economic Forum is where the elites gather to like plot taking over the world. The G8, G7 now is kind of like where the leaders meet for more of like a public facing moment, right? Where they announce deals, they meet with one another, and they kind of remind everybody who is in charge. BRICS has been seen as like the challenger to the G7/G20, which is the larger version of the G7. So the fact that even G7 members are now saying how irrelevant the G7 is and that it doesn't really matter anymore, it just goes to show how just in a few short years, G7 has just lost all its clout. The fact that they're talking about openly about restructuring the UN Security Council also goes to show how these other countries, these nuclear powers, are no longer as powerful as they have once claimed. The Security Council is 15 countries, 5 of them are permanent, and then 10 of them are like rotate. I forget how the mechanism is for choosing who's on the Security Council, but every couple of years, they swap out the 10 countries. The 5 are America, France, USA, China, and Russia. Those are the 5. And the Security Council basically is like the institution that comes up with like sanctions, like when the UN wants to sanction people, because they're deciding how are we going to militarily enforce stuff. When things pop up, how are we going to deal with this? And really the best way to deal with it is economic sanctions. That's like step 1. And then if military intervention is necessary, they send peacekeepers. So restructuring the UN Security Council was a major signal that like the new world order, as George Bush described it, is not going to happen. Okay, so let's pivot now to this story. We're going back to the Russia-Ukraine thing. I mentioned this on the other shows I was on today, but Jewish lobby deceived Putin, according to Lukashenko. This is fascinating. Russia and Ukraine were on the verge of a peace deal in early 2022 before it was derailed. The Belarusian president has said Russian President Vladimir Putin was deceived into withdrawing troops from near Kyiv in 2022 by forces claiming to represent Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has said, in speaking to an interview with Al Arabiya, Lukashenko said the conflict could have ended quickly in the early stages when Russian forces were near the Ukrainian capital. At the time, not only I, but everyone in the world understood that the war would end quickly with a Russian victory. This was primarily because the Russians were in Kyiv. That was a quote from Lukashenko. He claimed, however, that, quote unquote, certain politicians and forces asked Putin to stop, pull the troops back from Kyiv, and conclude a peace agreement. Quote, before that withdrawal, everyone understood that Ukraine's days were numbered, end quote. The Belarusian president argued that Russia was acting on what appeared to be a genuine opportunity to reach a settlement, adding, judge for yourselves who was right and who was wrong in this matter. Once again, probably these forces deceived him. It was the Vatican and surprisingly the Jewish lobby, the Israelis, Lukashenko said. They said on behalf of Zelensky, that's it. We are moving toward peace. We agree, and others as well. That the whole thing was a quote. It was not immediately clear what exactly Lukashenko meant by the quote-unquote Jewish lobby. In the early days of the conflict, then Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett acted as a mediator between Russia and Ukraine, meeting Putin in Moscow and holding phone calls with Zelensky. Media reports at the time claimed that Bennett urged Zelensky to accept Moscow's terms. Lukashenko did not elaborate on the Vatican's alleged role. In March 2022, however, Pope Francis and Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill held a video call in which they stressed the exceptional importance of the negotiation process. Moscow and Kyiv held several rounds of peace talks in Istanbul. In March 2022, Putin said in June 2023 that Ukrainian negotiators initialed a draft treaty of permanent neutrality and security guarantees, but that Kyiv later abandoned the deal after Russian troops withdrew from areas near the Ukrainian capital. Russia has argued that Ukraine walked away from the agreement under Western pressure. Then UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson reportedly urged Kyiv not to sign a deal and continue fighting. Kyiv has disputed Moscow's account of the failed talks, even though former chief negotiator David Arakamea has acknowledged Johnson's role. Ukraine has since formally applied to join NATO and abandoned discussions of neutrality. Yeah, so back in 2022 and ever since then, frankly, Boris Johnson, then Prime Minister of Britain, was credited, like he was blamed for the deal falling apart, right? Because he went after the deal was signed and Russia pulled out of Kyiv, backed away from Kyiv, instead of proceeding Ukraine agreeing to the terms of the deal, they said nope, no deal. Like, we're going to keep fighting. It basically gave them an opportunity to regroup and rearm and prepare for conflict after Russia had already defeated them militarily and had already taken the city of Kyiv. So had that not happened, Russia would have just taken Kyiv and we wouldn't be talking about this anymore. Instead, it gave NATO a chance to fortify Kyiv and back them up. They brought in a ton of mercenaries. A lot of them came from Colombia. Colonel Tanner Watkins talks about that. A lot of mercenaries come out of Colombia. Interesting. But the fact that Naftali Bennett is the guy who was working with both of them, he was the go-between between Putin and Zelensky. This is new information. Not new information that he's being blamed, that he was involved. I mean, here's an article from March of 2022 where he's advising Zelensky to accept the demands. And it says right here that he advised Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to agree to Russia's proposal. He says, quote, if I were you, I would think about the lives of my people and take the offer. Bennett told us to surrender, according to an official from Ukraine, and they had no intention of doing so. Kyiv apparently had no intention of agreeing to President Putin's demands. However, a top official in Bennett's office quickly denied any suggestion that a surrender had been made, saying that the Israeli PM, quote, doesn't intend to give Zelensky recommendations or advice at any stage. Says on Saturday, a top Ukrainian government advisor also denied that Zelensky had been advised to surrender. Quote, it says Israel, quote, just like other conditional intermediary countries does not offer Ukraine to agree to any demands of the Russian Federation. Polityak wrote on Twitter saying this would be impossible for military and political reasons. So there's debate over whether or not Bennett actually told Zelensky to surrender. What's very clear is that what was said back to Bennett, even in this potentially fabricated story, is that they said, no, we're not going to surrender. We have no intention of surrendering. The bombshell here, though, again, this story is 4 years old, over 4 years old. The bombshell is going back to Lukashenko's comments, because the bombshell is Naftali Bennett told Putin that they had a deal. And so Putin should pull it. That's the lie there. That's the deception. So regardless of whatever Zelensky said or Bennett said to Zelensky, we know that Bennett told the Russians, we have a deal. You're good to pull back, pull back. That's the only reason the war is still going right now, is because of Naftali Bennett. That is fascinating to me. And as I speculated on the other shows, we can't discount the fact that, number one, a war between Europe and Russia benefits Israel if their intention is to fight Iran, because that potentially brings, with Iran and Russia having a close alliance, that potentially brings NATO into a war with Iran. I said a while ago that Turkey and Iran, I think that was something they were trying to gin up. There was a lot of conflict happening on the border, or reports of conflict on the border between Iran and Turkey, which Erdogan had to basically say, yeah, we're not going to respond to any of that. We're not going to escalate. They wanted Turkey to attack. They wanted Iran to attack Turkey, because doing so would activate Article 5 and bring all of Europe into war against Iran. We'll get to Turkey in a minute, because they're going to be meeting there in a couple of days for the NATO summit. Let's stay on Israel, though, because we have... Let's go to Netanyahu. Well, before we go to Netanyahu, let's go to... Let's stay with Naftali Bennett. So here's a post from Channel 12. I read this on the shows earlier, but chairman of the Together Party and former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett at a press conference, the countdown, quote, the countdown to the regime change in Iran will begin the moment the government in Israel is replaced. Soon the people of Israel will elect new, dynamic, and determined leadership that will restore security to Israel. And he said Netanyahu's tenure began with a civil war, continued with the October 7th massacre, and ends in a historic failure against Iran. So he's baiting Netanyahu here. He's framing Netanyahu as a weakling, because the one thing that Netanyahu has always excelled at is war, conducting warfare. That's always been his MO, and how he attracts public support and builds public mandate for himself is by being the defender of Israel. And so now, I mean, naturally, Naftali Bennett and the political opponents of Netanyahu are going to go after that. And they're going to take that away from him, because that is how politics is played. And Netanyahu is now in a very sticky situation. Wallachie was saying that nobody's been talking about this, but of course, we've been talking about this for really years now. But Netanyahu is in an unwinnable game right now, because he either has to coalesce to what these people want, which is war. There is no anti-war party in Israel. That's what needs to be understood here. Regardless of how the people of Israel feel, okay? Because I'm sure there are people listening right now who have friends in Israel who speak to them, and their friends probably say, yeah, this is nonsense. I don't want to fight in this war. I don't want to get drafted into the IDF as a reservist. I don't want, I just want to live my life. I'm sure that plenty of people in Israel feel that way. That is not reflected, though, in the political landscape, in the spectrum. They don't have if those people, to whatever extent they exist, do not have a voice in government. They do not have anyone representing that perspective, at least not in a meaningful way. I mean, maybe there's a party out there that holds one seat or something, but nobody who's running for prime minister or set to be part of a new security cabinet. And that's the point. This is why Netanyahu had to be Trump's guy, because Netanyahu, I think, is controllable. He's also very predictable. You can predict what Netanyahu is going to do. He's going to capitalize on attacks, whether they're false flags or it's earnest attacks by whoever, Hamas, Hezbollah. He's going to capitalize on those in order to exploit them to conduct military campaigns. That's just what he does. So that makes him very easy to predict. And then you can plan around his incentive structure and kind of lead him down a specific path. I think the charges that were brought against him in 2019 were orchestrated, facilitated by President Trump with the help of Sheldon Adelson. And Adelson, his incentive would have been that Netanyahu betrayed Adelson when he went to the left-wing media mogul and said, hey, if you give me favorable coverage and you stop digging up my skeletons, I'll give you reporters exclusive access to what's happening in my government, so you can break news instead of Sheldon Adelson's companies breaking news. That's one of the 3 charges he's facing. Those 3 felonies is that charge, is that he was colluding with, whatever, a media mogul, defrauding the Israeli people, whatever it is. So now let's go to how everything is being received right now. Here's Netanyahu. This is from this morning. Netanyahu avoids criticizing U.S.-Iran deal, claims war's main goals have been achieved. The prime minister asserts that we have saved Israel from annihilation in the war, admits he and Trump don't always see eye to eye, stresses troops will remain in South Lebanon, admits he does not know all the details of a deal. Okay. And I think he's saying that to protect himself, because I don't think he does know what the details of the deal are. And instead of pretending that he does, and then learning later that the deals actually are not good for Israel, which would be a bad look for him, he's just like, yeah, I don't know what the deal is. And frankly, this is not our deal. It says, let's see, quote, with an agreement or without an agreement, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon, will not have nuclear weapons, not today, not tomorrow. As long as I'm prime minister of Israel, it will not happen, he declared, insisting that this was his life's mission. So then he goes through his accomplishments. With Iran, we had targeted the nuclear scientists. We eliminated the leaders of a terror regime. We crushed the nuclear facilities. We destroyed missiles in the vast majority of the factories that produced missiles. We struck countless military industries and infrastructure. We destroyed their navy, their air force. We eliminated base commanders who massacred the Iranian people. We caused enormous damage, estimated in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Some estimated even close to $1 trillion to Iran's economy. We saved Israel from annihilation. Okay. And then we have his enemies who come out, and they are, of course, well, it's not just his enemies, it's his ministers. So his ministers are his allies. Those are the guys in the security cabinet. And then his enemies are the opposition. And so you see both on screen here. Says ministers say Israel won't be bound by Iran deal as opposition castigates Netanyahu's absolute failure. So the messaging, as Wallachie said, and as I've said last week, the messaging is the exact same. The left, like the opposition party and his security ministers, are both saying the same thing. They're saying we're going to reject this deal. We don't want this deal because the deal is handcuffing us and telling us that we can't fight a war that we want to fight. And the opposition is just being mostly opportunistic, but I'm sure a lot of them really do want to fight Iran. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz vowed Monday that the Israeli military would remain in southern Lebanon and warned that if Iran strikes, it would be hit with full force, promising that Israel will resist any pressure after the U.S. and Iran agreed to a deal to end the war that also reportedly includes their commitment to end hostilities in Lebanon. Let's see. There was no immediate comment on the deal from the Prime Minister Netanyahu, but far-right members of his coalition said Israel would not be bound by the terms of the deal. Far-right Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said the deal was, quote, bad for Israel and for the entire free world, period. For their part, members of the opposition accused the premier, that's Netanyahu, of failing Israel's citizens and betraying the armed forces. Opposition leader Yair Lapid said Netanyahu lost the war and collapsed in the moment of truth, adding, quote, there has never, ever been a more absolute failure than Netanyahu's diplomatic failure on the Iranian front. Quote, the time has come for us to recognize the fact that Netanyahu simply cannot do it anymore, Lapid charged, complaining of an American president openly and publicly telling the prime minister of Israel, I am your boss and you will do what you are told. This is what I was saying earlier. That's what when Trump gets up and he says this stuff and the anti-Israel people perceive it as him being a Zionist, being a puppet, what he's really doing in a lot of these cases is he's making Netanyahu look weak because he's kind of taking control ostensibly of Israel's actions. He's kind of like depriving them of agency by saying that this is Trump doing it, not Netanyahu doing it. quote, the state of Israel won the battle. Netanyahu lost the war. The Israel Defense Forces fulfilled its mission. Netanyahu failed to deliver the goods. Lapid told reporters ahead of his Yesh Atid party's weekly faction meeting. Then it goes on to explain the peace deal. And then Israel Katz said that they will not, this is the defense minister, we're not going to withdraw from southern Lebanon. Here's his quote. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and I are leading a clear policy that determines that the IDF will remain in the security zones in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza without any time limit to protect the border and Israeli communities there from their against jihadist elements, Katz said in a statement. He said the security zones will be cleared of local residents and all terror infrastructure above and below ground, including the houses in the contact line villages that served as terror outposts will be destroyed. We will not, quote, we will not compromise on Israel's security interests or the protection of our citizens, and we will not withdraw from the security zones, Katz said, warning that if Iran attacks Israel because of the events in Lebanon, we will strike it with full force. And then here's, I'm just seeing breaking news that Iran is threatening military action if Israel keeps up southern Lebanon offensive. And again, I think they're going to get Trump's blessing here. I think Trump's like, you know what? We've already turned the page. We're not going back. We turned the page. We're making peace. If y'all want to keep fighting, that's fine. We don't want to be involved. Have a good day. Good luck to both. Good luck to everybody involved. I think that is what. And then here is the Likud party reportedly scraps election campaign, highlighting Netanyahu's close ties to Trump in the wake of the U.S.-Iran deal. This is telling you, if they're scrapping this, if they're throwing out that rhetoric, they are going to turn on Trump. They're basically like, we can't do Trump anymore. Trump is now probably a hated figure, at least in the Israeli political scene. I don't know about the Israeli, like the average person, but the Israeli political scene, because, let's see, of this story. Let's go to this one. No, not that one. Stand by for processing. This one. Awaiting full details, American Jewish leaders express alarm at emerging Iran deal. So all these are American leaders. American Jewish leaders are now very anxious. They're all talking about how anxious they are. They're all talking about how this doesn't make any sense. How, one of the quotes is, quote, we call on the administration to disclose the terms as soon as possible. President Morton Klein said in a statement. This is the Zionist Organization of America. That's one of the biggest ones out there. However, the little that we know is deeply problematic. That is the ZOA talking about that. Then we have, let's see, Klein's statement outlined a host of qualms based on reporting about the deal's possible conditions. Quote, it makes no sense for the U.S. to immediately give up its pressure on the Iranian regime, the blockade that was strangulating Iran economically, without obtaining immediate removal of Iran's nuclear stockpile, decommissioning of Iran's nuclear facilities, and destruction of Iran's deadly missile stockpile. Then it goes on and on. There's a number of others who, I know we're running out of time here, but a number of others who contributed quotes to that. We have, I wanted to share this one. G Money sent this one to me. Where's G Money? It's a screenshot, so I gotta save it and then reopen it. And this is a good one because I think I've seen basically this tone from so many different of these like Zionist influencers. This one's at like 42,500 views. It says, I never thought I would say this, but here we go. President Trump just made a fool of himself. As of today, I'm politically homeless. Trump's negative rhetoric toward Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, will embolden jihadists and their supporters worldwide. They are grinning from ear to ear right now. President Trump has been bought. So now we've gone from the anti-Israel people who were accusing Trump of being a puppet and then being bought off and compromised. Now this is what the pro-Israel people are going to say. They're going to be freaking out, and they're going to be throwing things at the wall and throwing a tantrum and saying, this is nonsense. This is terrible. We cannot accept this no matter what. I have from the Badlands news brief. Here's one headline: Trump screwed us. Israeli officials fume over an emerging Iran peace deal. Yair Lapid said Trump's Iran deal achieves none of Israel's war goals. Some of the people in Congress, it's starting with the Democrats, Seth Moulton, but I think the Republicans are going to join this chorus. Trump's Iran deal is lose, lose, lose. So these are like the Zionists in the Democrat Party, which there are Zionists in the Democrat Party for sure. Here's from Ynet. This is the largest Israeli online publication. What's disturbing is that Israel cannot influence. Her voice is not heard. We are no longer in the loop and cannot really have an impact, they said. In Israel, and an official, senior official warned this is a bad agreement which harms our interest. The warning is that the memorandum that was drafted gives Tehran economic oxygen without dismantling the terrorist infrastructure, leaves Israel without influence and with the White House, and raises concerns that the path to a settlement in Lebanon will involve dangerous concessions. And then there are reports now of violence breaking out across the West Bank, Jewish settlers burning cars, burning homes in defiance. Bezalel Smotrich putting out posts saying this deal is bad for Israel. Benny Gantz putting out posts saying under no circumstances should this be accepted. The emerging agreement with Iran appears to be a strategic failure. That's the term that others have used as well, like American political leaders. Lindsey Graham emphasizing that any deal needs to be reviewed by Congress, and he looks forward to that process. So that's telling you that their plan is to use Congress to try to block this. Mark Levin says the exact same thing. We need a congressional review. He posted 2 days ago and said, I've asked for days. Why can't we, the people, see a damn MOU, not through people briefed by an anonymous person? Honestly, I've never seen anything like this. If it is a great outcome for peace, then release it. He's not wrong, by the way. Like, if this thing is like the path to peace, releasing it to the public as soon as it's agreed upon makes sense. You can make the argument that maybe they're withholding it because they're workshopping some of the particulars. However, Trump did say that, I think I have this right here, that they signed a electronic version of this right here. Here it is. U.S. says Trump, Vance, and Iran's Ghalibaf, who I believe is the leader of the parliament, digitally signed an Iran deal on Sunday. So President J.D. Vance said on Monday that the memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran was signed digitally. So the deal's signed. The deal's done. I think they're withholding it because they're going to let these people spin out for a little bit. And I bet you the deal ends up being way better than these people are presenting. But they don't want the deal because they want the war. It doesn't matter what the deal says. They want the war. And that is the bottom line. I don't think we're going to have time to run through this, guys, but I did do a little bit more digging into, remember that like Turkey, Greece hypothetical that I laid out? Well, I did a little bit of research into that to see if there's any like meat on that bone. And it looks like there's some conflict happening. No guarantees it's going to happen. It's just something I'm keeping an eye on. We have this NATO summit occurring. The NATO summit, I believe that starts the 7th of July. Okay, so that's further out than I thought. I thought it was happening next week. So we got a couple weeks before that. man, a lot could happen between now and then. I think that Iran, it would be great if Iran showed up at this thing and met with Trump face to face. That would be fantastic. So this is going to be right after Trump's big party for 4th of July. You got to get Iran there. You got to get a handshake between Trump and whoever, Pezeshkian, Galibaf, whoever it is. But going back to this Greece thing, so here's February 2026. Turkey and Greek leaders voice desire to resolve issues after talks. The leaders of Turkey and Greece voiced their desire to resolve longstanding maritime disputes, hobbling ties during discussions in Ankara on Wednesday as the NATO allies and historic rivals try to build on warming relations. The neighbors have been at odds over a range of issues for decades, primarily maritime boundaries and the rights in the Aegean, an area widely believed to hold energy resources and with key implications for airspace and military activity. Here is January 29th, 2026. Turkey says Greece must coordinate research activities in contested Aegean waters. So there's a little bit of posturing here. And then this one's from May. Greece asks the EU to step in over unlawful fishing by Turkey. So they're accusing, this is May 15th. So 2 months ago, or no, I'm sorry, 1 month ago. So they're saying that they're accusing Turkey of fishing in their waters. So it's not beyond the realm of possibilities to think that we could see like a naval conflict here between Turkey and Greece. Here's another one. This one is, I think, from further longer ago. When is this? March 5th. So this is from March 2026. EU countries shield Cyprus amid renewed Greece-Turkey relations. Greece's mobilization to support Cyprus has raised eyebrows in Ankara. So European governments are rallying behind Cyprus as the widening war with Iran spills into the Eastern Mediterranean, with capitals increasingly worried that Turkey could exploit the turmoil to press its own claims on the divided land. EU countries are joining forces to provide military support to Cyprus, which remains on high alert against potential attacks from Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. However, Greece's mobilization has raised eyebrows in Ankara. So again, like, not beyond the realm of possibilities that we might see this happen. I'm not saying it will, and I'm hoping it doesn't, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and we could see a desperation act from the Zionists, who have allies all over the world, including in Greece, probably including in Turkey too, I bet. All right, guys, hit the thumbs up, and let's. Oh yeah, that's right. Kim, in the chat, y'all said Kimmy G is the ambassador. Paula Sin Mesa, Kimberly Guilfoyle, right? She's the ambassador to Greece. Tom Barrack, Trump's best friend, is the ambassador to Turkey, right? So that's interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Hit the thumbs up. Share the show. Let's check and see if we have any Badlands news briefs. Badlands boost. If you go to badlandsmedia.tv/boost, or just click on the boost at the top banner. Looks like, we have no, those are from Eleanor. I think we already got those, Eleanor. June 10th. Eileen Michaud, I hope I'm saying that right, 17. Thanks, Ghost, for all your insights, and keep working and work. Thanks, Ghost, for all your insight and work, keeping us up to date and informed on the geopolitical stage. Your analysis is thought-provoking and seems very plausible as events unfold. Well, I definitely appreciate that, Eileen. All right, guys, hit the thumbs up. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/events. We have the GART 12 event coming up. Man, we're like 10 days out from Deadwood. So look forward to seeing people in Deadwood. Hit the thumbs up, and we will see you next time, which is going to be Friday. We will be back here. And y'all have a fantastic day.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.